Thank you, Jasmine and Dheeraj. And I hope you are enjoying the Hashi Talks till now. And we are again here to yet another talk of Hashi Talks 2024. And this time, we would be learning about something special, and that is policy as code. So, yeah, you heard it right. We would be talking about policy as code. We would be talking about its power, and we would be seeing how HashiCorp Sentinel can help us implementing policy as code, right? So, before moving ahead, let me introduce myself a bit. So, I am Aniket Kumar Sinha. I currently work as the cloud consultant at Rapid Circle, and my day to day just revolves around HashiCorp tools, that is Terraform, Sentinel, and I mainly work with the Azure environment. And I also obviously play with the GitHub because who is left without GitHub? And I've been 5x certified in Microsoft certifications, and I love to speak at conferences like HashiTalks. So, what exactly is this PAC? Okay, so PAC, that means policy as code. So you can just understand that policy then as then code. So we are talking about policies in some format of code, right? So let's assume a scenario that suppose you are working in a company. Okay, you have a big team, okay, which has many employees, and you your architects have set some policies or some rules that okay, so if we are creating some, so, let's take example of VM, then the sizes of those VM should be in this category of list. Okay, suppose standard DS1 or standard D1 V2. So we have some category of list or some policies that the VM sizes or the storage account sizes or any other policy to restrict some categories or some things that we are implementing. Okay, and suppose you are a new person in your team, okay, and you are joining this team, you are excited to implement or to contribute to this specific project. You join, you do the changes, and then you just go ahead and run your pipeline to deploy it. But unfortunately, you haven't visited the documentation and you have implemented the wrong things which were against the policies. And it is a human tendency that that one can make mistakes while reviewing the pipeline. Okay, or even the architect might not be aware that you are implementing or adding some new changes. Okay, and then ultimately the project is having the wrong information which shouldn't be there. So you need to roll it back, you need to like set it in the right manner. So there is a hell lot of next processes to just make it in the right way. So here the PSC can play a major role. So let me just erase this all. So PAC, that is policy as code, is an approach for policy management. Okay. So we would be using policies, we would be creating policies, but not in the GUI format. We would be not opening any interface and then like click, 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 adding policy stuff. So we are not going to do that because that is a lengthy process. And if humans are doing something, it he or she can make mistake. It is a general feature, but code will not make mistake. Code will always work as it is. So that's why we are now using policy, or we are now implementing policy in the form of code. Okay, so you have gone through the scenario, you have understood a basic need of this policy as code implementation. So let's move ahead with some more. So codification of policies in place of GUI creation. So as we discussed just now, that if we are codifying the policies, it would be more clear, and the tendency or the chances of like pushing wrong information would be very very less or next to like zero. So that's why we are creating code or codifying the policies in just in place of the GUI or UI click click buttons. Okay, and obviously it would be helping in removing any kind of manual intervention, because manual intervention can create problems. And obviously if we are coding, we are keeping a track, or we are version controlling the code, so we can see that which person has implemented what kind of policies, and we can work upon it if any scenarios came. And obviously PAC is very agile and scalable. So like in GUI you have multiple things to go on, you need to click multiple parts to implement any single policy, and if you are having, suppose you are having 50 policies, then you have to go through those long process 50 times, and that is very tedious. So in place of that, you are using a code which is easily scalable. You can like add more policy files, you can add more policies in your code, and just you can push it and use it as it is. So it is really agile and scalable. And at the end, obviously, it is very good for security and risk management because we are adding everything as code. And what's better than HashiCorp Sentinel to implement policy as code? So let's talk about a bit on Sentinel also. So Sentinel or HashiCorp Sentinel is a policy as code framework. Okay, so it's basically a framework, a tool which helps you to implement policy as code in your HashiCorp tool. Suppose you're using Terraform, okay, Terraform to like deploy your infrastructure. Let's take Azure or AWS infrastructure to deploy it over the portal or to deploy it over the cloud, and you are using Sentinel for that. So HashiCorp, sorry, you are using Terraform for that, and HashiCorp Sentinel can be a part of that workflow to implement policy at code to see if the things are working fine or not. And we would also be seeing ahead that how we are adding Sentinel in our Terraform pipeline. So basically, Sentinel is a key to enable fine-grained logic-based policy decisions. Let me just erase it and use the laser now. Yes. So it is the key to enable fine-grained logic-based policy decisions. And for that, we are using Sentinel because Sentinel is one of the best tools present in the market to implement policy as code. So we saw one scenario where you implemented the code changes, which was against the policies, and you just deploy it. So you can see that this is the similar scenario. So you have the Terraform code, you have the infrastructure, you have put it on the VS or the version control, you have moved it to the plan. This is over the Terraform cloud, and you are moving ahead to apply it. So after applying, you know that Terraform would be deploying everything, every infrastructure to your portal or to your cloud, maybe Azure, maybe AWS, maybe GCP, or any other part. So this is the thing without Sentinel. But if we are adding Sentinel, so you can see this is in between of plan and apply phase. So you would be running the plan, you would be seeing what changes are there, and suppose you miss it. Okay, then Sentinel policy is also there to check if everything that is getting implemented or that is getting deployed through this pipeline is correct or not. If it is correct, then it would give you an option to apply and move ahead, or if you have chosen the auto apply, you can just go ahead. And if not, if the things are against the policies which are mentioned in this specific Sentinel policy checks or whatever policies which we have implemented through Sentinel, then obviously it would be stopping the pipeline and letting you know that yeah, these are the changes or these are the things which are going against the policies which you have implemented. So here Sentinel plays a very, very major role because we cannot expect anything wrong in our production pipeline specifically. So that's why implementing Sentinel in our pipeline, in our infrastructure deployment process would be a really, really helpful thing to like really make your load a bit less, because you can do mistake, but this specific code or policy at code cannot. So we have talked much about the policy as code. Now let's see how we can use or how we can implement policy as code specifically using the Sentinel. Okay. So you can see that this specific area is the home screen or the home page of the Terraform cloud. Okay. So you need to go to the settings and you have the option of policies here. Let me just increase the size also. So you have the option of policies and policy sets here. Okay. So currently I am using a single policy to show this demo. So I would be using the Terraform cloud itself to add my code. But suppose you are having a big policy as code base. So suppose you are having multiple policies, 50 policies, 100 policies, then you can create a repository, add all your policies there, and then use that repository to implement the policy as code. For that, we need to use the policy sets where we specifically choose that specific repository. So for the policies, we are going just to policies, and here we are having the option of create a new policy. So we are going here. We are choosing the Sentinel option and giving the name to this specific policy which we are creating. So let's create a policy which the thing which we discussed, that to restrict or to have specific categories of sizes for our VM. So let's say VM underscore sizes. So we can see that we can use its dashes and underscores in for the policy name, and we can give it a description that this policy restricts the size of VMs. Okay, and here comes the enforcement behavior. So now what is this enforcement behavior? Let's talk about this. So Sentinel policy can be applied on the workspace level, on the global level, that is under your whole Terraform cloud, and in the runs also. So for that, we have three enforcements level. So we have advisory level. So advisory level is just to give you advice. Okay, it does not stop your pipeline. So it will give you advice that this is your advisory policy and your code base is going against your advisory policy, so you can easily override it. Okay, next category is soft mandatory. So this is also a policy which you are implemented, but it is soft mandatory. So if you are an authorized person, so if you have authority, maybe you are a owner of the specific workspace, then you can override it if you are sure that yeah, whatever changes are going, you want that only. And third, and the most important part, is the hard mandatory. So this is the hard, like the fixed policy, you cannot override it even if you are the owner. So this is the hard mandatory policy which you can implement. Okay, and even if you are owner, you cannot override it. So if this is fixed, so this is fixed, no one can override it. So we were in the policy changes. So we are here. So now you got the understanding that what the enforcement behaviors are. We have advisory, soft mandatory, and hard mandatory. So let's first use the advisory part, and here we can add the code. Okay, so what code we are using? So this is the code which we have created. So we have created this specific code file, and we have used a special language, that is Sentinel language. So it is a language created by HashiCorp itself to implement the policy as code. So here we are creating, like we are importing TF plans, we have importing strings. So I would be showing you ahead that how we can import or what exactly we are importing from the TF plan, and then we are creating some functions to basically specify our policy or to check what exactly we are implementing. We are adding some functions here. Okay, and these all are Sentinel language, and I have added a link at the end through which you can also explore what exactly the Sentinel language is. And at the end, we have given a list that yeah, these are the allowed sizes. So currently we have added four sizes that which are allowed in our VM. So standard A1, standard A2, standard D1, and standard D2 V2. Okay, and then we are adding this, we are using the abovely created functions to basically check if our code base is having these specific sizes or not. If not, then it would be giving error. And at the end, we are calling this VM validated part in our main root. Okay, so this is for a single specific policy. Suppose you are adding multiple policies, then you would be creating like multiple .sentinel files in this repository, and at the end you can create sentinel.hcl file where you can add the final mail rules, where you will be calling all your these small rules. Suppose this is VM validated, you must be having something for the storage account, something for the ADLS. So you can call all your created policies under this main rule file, which would be under sentinel.hcl file, and you can just use that repository for your policy enforcement. So let me just copy this part, and then we are adding this here. Okay, so we have added the Sentinel policy code, and then we have the policy set. So we would be seeing that how we can use the policy set ahead. So if you have already created any policy set, you can just choose it, or you can maybe create a policy set and use this policy or add this policy in that policy set itself. So this is how we create it, and then we just tap on create policy. But for the demo purpose, we have already created few policies here, and we would be using that only. And when we are going to the policy sets, we have already created one. So this is a policy set where we need to give the name, we need to give a description, and see here the option of the scope. So you can even implement this policy globally, that under the organization itself, or you can put it on the selected projects or workspaces. So we have multiple projects here, we can choose what workspace we need to implement it. Even if you want some kind of exclusions, we can exclude it. Okay, and then you are getting an option of policies. So you created the policy here, right? So you can just choose what new policy you want to add to the specific policy set. Okay, so from here only you can choose that in specific or in what workspaces you want to implement what kind of policies. Okay, so we have created this now. Okay, so currently we are using this created policy, and here we have restricted, we have chosen hard mandatory, and we have chooses this policy set. And in the policy set, we have implemented the specific policies to few of our workspaces. So we would be using one of these workspaces. Okay, so we have this Azure Terraform infrastructure demo workspace, and you can see that this policy set, this restrict VM size policy set, is having this specific Azure Terraform infrastructure demo workspace in the implementation part. Okay, so just to show you once that if we are having everything correct, you can go to the run, and this is how the workflow would be looking like. We would be having plan, cost estimation, and apply. So these are like, these three are simple if you're using Terraform Cloud. But now we are having another stage between plan and apply. So you can see that we have the Sentinel policy pass stage, and if it is passed, that you can see that yeah, now everything is fine. Enforcement was hard mandatory, and rule was this, and the value is correct. So that's why it is passed. But now let's see what happens if this fails. So if our code base or our values are not matching with our policy, so this specific code base or this specific repo is used for that infrastructure. And let me just do some changes which are against the implemented policy via Sentinel. So we are using github.dev for doing these changes. It is just opening up. Okay, yeah. So here we are, and here is, so let me just make it D1 to DS1, and let me just push it. Change the VM size. Okay, we have pushed it. Now going back to runs, you can see that our run has already started. Okay, now the plan is will be starting up. It is in the queued stage right now. Okay, so let's start the run. Yeah, it has started. So you can see the plan has started now. Okay, so the plan would be working as it is. It would be giving you the logs as it is, like it will showing what all changes are there, what all new things are getting created or changed or deleted. You can see that the plan is as it is. You can see that it is showing the changes of the VM. Okay, see, but you can see that yes, the Sentinel policy is failed, and that's why the pipeline is also stopped. It is not moving ahead with the apply because we have added a hard policy here. So we can see what exactly the error is. So you can see in the description, it was the hard mandatory, and the resource, that is the VM, has attributes VM size with the value standard underscore ds1 underscore v2, and that is not allowed in the list. And we are also having the list that what exactly is allowed. Okay, and you can see the value is false. So that's why it failed and also stopped in from moving ahead with the apply. So this is the case with the hard mandatory. Let's now try it with the advisory. Okay, so if we are going to the policies, let me just remove it from the hard mandatory first. Update policy, and let me just, so we have implemented this with the advisory. And let me just add the policy set here and let me update it. Okay. Again, we are going to the runs and we are rerunning it. And this time we are having the advisory policy, not the hard mandatory one. So we are going here. The plan is running fine. It would be showing again the changes, and let's see what Sentinel policy pending stage or Sentinel policy stage would be showing us. Plan is done. Customization, and you can see that it has some different sign, and we are still having the option of that we can apply these changes. Now let's see what exactly there is. You can see that advisory policy, and it is showing the same things, right? Is not allowed. But since this is advisory and I have only created this and I'm the owner of this specific workspace, I can just confirm and apply even if it is going against. Okay. So this was the part, and we have implemented our policies. We have seen that how we can do all the changes, add more policies to it. And you remember that we were importing the TF plan, right? So what exactly or what all the things which we are importing? So you can see in the run, there is an option for download Sentinel mocks. So if we are downloading it, so it has been downloaded here. Let me open it. Okay. You can see that these are the files. These are the mock files which are containing the details related to the plan phase. Okay, so whatever we have implemented in the plan phase, these are kind dot sentinel files which are having those details that yeah, this is the VM, this is the change. So it would be containing all these changes, and that is what we are implementing in our policy file. Okay, so cool. We are here. We have implemented the Sentinel policy successfully. We have implemented the policy as code successfully, and we have make us a bit free from doing the tedious job of adding policies manually. All our checks are passed. We can see plan, estimation, Sentinel policy passed, and finally, if we are all fine, we have applied it. So this was the part for the code implementation. If you want that specific code or the .sentinel file code which we have implemented right now, you can just scan this QR code, or you can go to that bit.ly/sentinel-implementation. You would be getting all the code base there, the code of the policy which we have implemented. So we have implemented policy as code, and this file would be containing that code. And if you also want to explore more about the Sentinel language, you want to learn how we can use Sentinel language to create policy as code, you can scan this QR code or visit bit.ly/sentinel-language to explore more about Sentinel and its language. So that was it. Thanks for this session. Thanks for listening to me and understanding more about policy as code. And if you want to connect with me, you can scan this QR code or visit to linktree/Aniket Kumar Sinha, and you can connect with me there. And if you have any other doubt, you can ask in the comments, or even you can reach out to me personally to clarify everything. So yeah, thank you.